Welcome to another episode of Chat Sports Talk. Y'all know my name's Chad. Take a dive on sports. Welcome to week 5 of the college football recap video and the continuation of my Eliminator. It's another fun weekend of college football action. A lot of surprises were out there. Quite a few that no one saw coming. Really close games. And also some weren't really seeing and costing the number one team their number one spot. And we'll kind of go over the recap of my games. 14 games I picked. That's right, I went to 14. I'm no longer doing just 10. I'm going to just come out with a bunch of games. Go, this is what I'm picking, and go from there. Before diving into all that nonsense, if you could go ahead and give me a thumbs up, especially like the content I provide you. Really pleases you two guys. Really help the channel out. You also subscribe. Love you guys review my work. Love you all for doing that. Now, me, if you subscribe, this costs you a dime. Helps me provide more time value for you. So, basically, we'll kick this one off with the my recap of the previous week. Now, if you've been following my trajectory these past 4 weeks of college football, you realize my best hasn't really been that good. I've always been, I think, like the 7-3 in week 1 is probably about my best week, and just kind of hanging around that 5-6 mark and not really progressing. And then I'll do better on sometimes on my extra games. I'll do like another 6 or 8 games there, and I'm doing quite well in some of those games. And I just finally just stopped all that nonsense. Went, okay, here is some bunch of games that we're going to call on. I did throw a couple of extra bonus ones that I looked at that kind of give you my little star pick for them. But I went with 14 this week, and I did actually halfway decent. I went 9-5, so I was quite happy with myself. There was a few games I was trying to call for an upset. Didn't quite happen. A couple of other games with a different direction. And even my 2 extra games, I actually went 2-0. I also have a couple of extra games I'll also highlight that were a close game and 2 other upsets that was not in the cards for anyone. And then we'll once again, go over my Eliminator. Updated Eliminator, by the way. And let's go ahead and just kick this one off in Colorado Springs, where Air Force is playing host to Navy. This is the first game in the Commander-in-Chief's Trophy between the 3 service academies. I think the Commander-in-Chief's Trophy could be decided in Arlington when Air Force will take on Army. But if Army wins that one, then it's the Army-Navy game will determine who wins the Commander-in-Chief's Trophy. Just happens how this series always ends up going. You never know who's going to win this one. But for Air Force, they jumped out early on Navy, got up 10-0. But after that, that's when the defenses took over, and no one could really do much of anything. And it was an air attack that got them the touchdown. But after that, they went the ground and pound. And it was standard service academy football, triple options, and not very exciting unless you like that style of game. And Air Force was able to hold off a late charge, end up winning 13-10, and go 4-1 on the season. Next, we head out to Fayetteville, Arkansas, where the Torrance Razorbacks are playing host to number 2 Alabama. Now, with this one, I was kind of going, okay, with Arkansas because of their tenacity. They did, of course, they had to come back from behind to beat Missouri State, which is a kind of a bad mark on their resume. Held off a late surge against Cincinnati, and they should have beaten Texas A&M. That's right there. Those are the 3 games everyone's kind of pinpoint the Arkansas season on thus far. So this is going to be a key game in that SEC West race, and I thought Arkansas could do it. Alabama had other ideas. They jumped out early, 28-7 at half. Bryce Young actually got knocked out of this game, so they go to the backup, and they put them 21 points in the fourth quarter. I mean, it was just a one-sided affair. I mean, they did try to come back. I mean, they got it 28-23. I'm like, all right, cool. You know, Arkansas can come back, and then Alabama just shut the door in their face and ruined my perfect week right then and there. Alabama was just too much. Smacked Arkansas 49-26, and then retook number one in the polls after this game. More reasons behind that one later. Then we had to Iowa City, where the Hawkeyes playing host to Michigan, and I kept emphasizing in my preview video that Iowa plays defense. But Michigan defense actually did more than Iowa's defense, because it was a 20-0 game heading into the fourth. Iowa's offense couldn't do anything, which I've mentioned before. That's something they're missing this year is an offense, and their defense was going to keep them in games, and defense was doing their part. They were just minimizing the damage Michigan was doing on them. However, the offense couldn't match that tenacity and actually put points on the board until the fourth quarter. Michigan still ended up closing the door on them, winning 27-14, going 5-0 in the season, making that Big Ten East race between Michigan and Ohio State be even more enticing towards the end of the year. And we're going to see who comes out of the West, because right now it's wide open, and more on the Big Ten West later in this video as well. And then we'll go over the primetime matchup over there in Clemson, South Carolina, and the pageantry that Clemson has when they're making their entrance. I mean, really, you don't bust them around the stadium so they can run down and they can touch the rock. But that's what they do. That's what they hype them up. That's what they hype the crowd, hype up the team. They have they've tied the longest winning streak at home in NCAA history right now. Take on NC State, and they're another team looking for blood. It's a top 10 matchup under the lights on ABC. It was something to behold, and it was just a decent showing by both teams, really. I mean, it was a defensive struggle for most of the game. I mean, it was only 13-10 at half. I mean, it was a great showing by both defenses, and offenses were hitting the marks when they had to hit the marks most of the time. But Clemson was just that much better on that night, and they were able to end up winning 30-20, pretty much making them the number 4 team in the nation right now in terms of the playoffs. And Clemson looks like they're back. They're probably, could be a few question marks here and there. I mean, they probably will stumble later on in the season. That just happens to be college football. But do they stumble for a loss, or do they just stumble and just barely squeak out? That's the question. But that was a awesome game to watch. Hats off to Clemson for winning 30-20. Then we had the Ole Miss playing host to Kentucky. And this one, I thought Kentucky was going there and just running havoc. Ole Miss had other ideas, and they jumped out early, 14-6 in the first, up 19-12 at the half. So once again, one of those weird scores once again. And their defense really shut them down. Shut down Kentucky. Only allowed them to score a touchdown the entire second half. Kentucky's defense did their part, only allowing Ole Miss to get a field goal in the entire second half. So the defenses did their part, but Ole Miss already had that early lead, and the defense was able to just step on it, put their foot down, and go, nope, you should not pass. And then beating Kentucky 22-19 in a huge matchup right there in the SEC. Out there in Waco, Texas, where Baylor were playing host Oklahoma State. Now, this was a dramatic 2 games last year, in which Oklahoma State won last year in Stillwater, but ended up losing the Big 12 championship game. Now they're in Waco, Oklahoma State. I say once again, Oklahoma State's going to win this one. This is just something about Oklahoma State that they look like the top team in the Big 12. Now, so there's something about Oklahoma State. They look like the top team in the Big 12, and they were just firing on the cylinders that had to fire on. I mean, there was 16-3 at half, and they're looking pretty dominant. and they were just holding on, going blow for blow in the third, even though Baylor had a slight edge. But it wasn't enough. It was like 33-25 at the end of the third quarter, and then the defense just stepped up. They shut down those offenses, except for one play where Oklahoma State was able to get a extended lead and ended up winning 36-25. All right, now we're going to head out to Salt Lake City, where Oregon State came to town. And Oregon State, the previous week, was a very, very talented squad. I'm trying to see who, they took USC to town. And I really thought they could do that with Utah. Utah, I don't think, has really shown their prowess yet because they struggled early in the season. Not today. Not today. Not on Saturday. They stepped up and just obliterated Oregon State. It was not even close. 42-16. Rising had 4 total touchdowns. It was a complete dominance by the Utes. In that showdown they're going to have with USC later on. Because they're going to face them. I have a feeling. Just remember, the Pac-12 is not doing divisions this year, so it's the top 2 teams that will go at it. So that will give an opportunity maybe to see Utah and USC the championship game. I mean, that's a high probability. But the Utes just looked unstoppable on Saturday. And only time will tell, see what happens later on. Then Texas A&M heads out to Mississippi State, and this one, I already said it was Mississippi State. They had to bounce back from their embarrassment against LSU, and the Aggies are not flashy on offense. Now, that's the best way of putting it. They're not that flashy on offense. They don't scare you offensively. Defensively, it's a school that will test you. So, with that aspect, I knew it was going to be somewhat close because of A&M's defense. But I thought the Bulldogs are looking to rebound, like I said, from their disaster against LSU. And it was like that. I mean, it's 14-0.5, which is nothing to really go, okay, yeah, this is going to be, Mississippi State's going to win this one. It was all the points scored in the second half where the defense is we give up. Just go. Just do what you want. Just see who can score the most points. 35 points in the fourth quarter. That's all Mississippi State really needed. They scored 21 of those points, by the way. They ended up outgunning A&M 42-24 to go 4-1 on the season. And it was one of those entertaining games. And then one of the major upsets of this past weekend, and once again, it involved OU. Last week, Oklahoma lost at home to Kansas State, so they figured, okay, they're going to go to TCU and, rebound. TCU had their ideas. Duggan had over 300 yards with 3 touchdowns. Miller had 136 yards on the ground with 2 touchdowns. It was just a rout. That was it. I mean, I thought the Sooners were going to do the routing. Apparently can't run over Horned Frogs. And they just obliterated Oklahoma. They were up 27-10 after the first quarter. 27-10 after 1 quarter. Then let you know how bad this game was going to be. It was 55-17 after 3. That was it. TCU was all over Oklahoma. Oklahoma season, I think, is done. It's amazing. I mean, they have that big game against Texas next week. I mean, a huge rivalry there, but wow. They got to figure some things out in Oklahoma because that was embarrassing. I think it was their worst blowout ever. Well, probably not ever, but definitely in recent memory, and that's their worst blowout. So they got to get some things fixed in OU before their big game against the Longhorns. And then we head out to Tallahassee, where Wake Forest came to town, and there's a lot of things going to Florida State. It's like, hey, they're undefeated. They're going to remain undefeated. Look at this Florida State team. They're great. Their marquee win was against LSU in the beginning of the season. Wake just struggled against, Liberty, and people are like, no, this is not the Wake Forest of last year, which is correct. But Hartman is the X factor in this game, and that's all it was. But Wake was able to do enough, sustain enough. The defense stepped up when they had to, which was something that has been lacking a lot recently. So kudos for that, for the defense actually showing up. Because remember last week they lost to Clemson in a close matchup. So, these are not one of these teams that's easily pushed over. And they were just way too much for the Seminoles. Going up 21-7 at half. And just maintaining. They didn't really have to be flashy. They had to go too much. I mean, Florida State, they get that touchdown in the fourth, get the 2-point conversion. They bring within 10, but that is it. Wake Forest was able to edge them out 31-21 and go 4-1 in the season. And then Texas Tech went out to Manhattan, Kansas, take on the Wildcats, who did that wonderful upset last week against Oklahoma, with Martinez scoring all the touchdowns on the ground and in the air. And I really thought Texas Tech was going to take that emotional win they did against Texas and bring that into up there in Kansas and do it again. Kansas had other ideas. I mean, K-State had other ideas. They went up 13-0 in the first, but, the offense struggled in the second quarter. It was 13-10 half. Tech went up. It was tied after 3 at 20-20, but it went through Martinez. Getting 3 touchdowns on the ground again. I said, what we're dealing with Martinez, do you stop him from passing for touchdowns and let him run? Or you stop him from running and let him pass? I mean, this is this style of quarterback that's really hard to really defend against. Is like, how do you stop one aspect of his game? It's hard to do. You even looked at in the NFL. You look at other quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. These guys are mobile quarterbacks back there. That you take away one thing, they're going to hit you with a different one. So same thing here. Martinez is definitely one of those dual threat quarterbacks. And he was the factor in this one. And Kansas State ended up winning 37-28, going 4-1 in the season. And then undefeated Kansas. That's right, undefeated Kansas. It's playing host to Iowa State. Kansas was not yet ranked after they beat undefeated Duke last week. That's right. Last week, Duke and Kansas faced off. Undefeated in football. Hell's frozen over. But I jumped behind Kansas on this one. It's like they got to get out there and stake a claim for themselves. And this was an ugly game. This was an ugly game. Kansas was able to get the 14 points in the first. Iowa State got 8 points as well, and then they only got 3 goals in the second half. This was a defensive showdown for only really 4 scoring plays. That was it. That was it for these offenses that were actually halfway decent, and you only got 4 scoring plays. So the defenses stepped up, did their part, but Kansas was slightly better, winning in a baseball blowout, 14-11. What is about this year and these weird scores in football, both college and pro? But 14-11, Kansas wins, goes to 5-0. That's right, 5 wins they have right now. I don't know, Kansas could make some interesting noises, but we'll see what happens. Then we have to Pullman. Last week I called for an upset in Pullman of Washington State over Oregon. Didn't happen. Ward didn't throw an interception late in that game, which iced it. They played host to Cal, was 3-1 when it came in, so Cal was actually doing halfway decent. And once again, defenses were stepping up, putting a stranglehold on these offenses. It was only 14-3 heading in the fourth with Washington State in the lead. Ward had over 340 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. And it was in the fourth quarter where Washington State actually, stretched ahead and put up enough points where they were just too far ahead. It hold off and beat Cal 28-9 to go 4-1 season. And then Liberty and Old Dominion. I threw this one out here because I knew it was going to be an interesting game because how Liberty's been playing. They've been playing teams really close. They shouldn't be. Old Dominion, like I said, they had that upset win against Virginia Tech. They almost knocked off Virginia, which I tried to call. Didn't quite happen that way. So I knew it was going to be a close game between these two. And if you watch this, you were not disappointed. This was actually a really good offensive performance, especially by Wolf from Old Dominion, almost 300 yards passing. But it was the legs of Hunter from Liberty that had 121 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. Proved to be the X factor in this one, even though the Wolf-Jennings connection still had a great almost 130 yards in the air, or 130 yards in between them and touchdown. But Liberty was just a little bit too much. Shut them Old Dominion out in the fourth quarter. Actually, pretty much in the second half, only allowed 1 touchdown. And got past Old Dominion 38-24. And those were my 14 games. So I ended up losing, of course, the Oklahoma game, the Texas Tech, Kentucky, Arkansas, and NC State were the games that I actually lost. So they're actually not too bad. I called up for a couple games to go one direction. They did not. One that I didn't know. I think anyone saw coming unless you're a TCU fan. So like I said, I wasn't I didn't feel too bad about this previous week, so let's go over the couple games I went after. Like I said, I could have talked about these games, but didn't. One of them was LSU and Auburn. And I said there's going to be LSU, and there's LSU is starting to click right now under Kelly. Unfortunately, now I'm bitter that he left. But the team is starting to gel around him a bit, and they went to Auburn and was able to edge out the Tigers 21-17. Put them 4-1, 2-0 in SEC play. So their game against Alabama should be fun. And then another one that I kind of called was Illinois winning in Madison. This game actually called for ended up getting the head coach of Wisconsin fired. I don't know. Maybe he gets a job later on in Illinois and goes in there and beats Wisconsin. I mean, this is what Bellamy did. He used to be Wisconsin head coach. Now he's coaching Illinois. Win to Madison, got to win. It wasn't, Chase Brown was actually, the highlight for the Illini, almost 130 yards on the ground, that touchdown. But that third quarter where Illinois posted 17 points, that's all they needed. They ended up going up 31-10. The Illini defense shut out Wisconsin that second half. Illini blew out Wisconsin 34-10 to go 4-1 overall and 1-1 in conference standings. Maybe the Illini make a push in that Big Ten West. Who knows? Kind of go over some other games that are shockers. We head to Missouri, where the unranked and 500, 2-2 Tigers are playing host to the number 1 team in the nation, Georgia. The Tigers are supposed to have been scared. Somebody forgot to tell the Tigers. They took it to the Bulldogs. Nate Bennett had a hard time, really, I mean, he still had 300 yards passing, but he had 0 touchdowns. And, Mizzou was doing exactly what it had to do to take control. I mean, 16-6 at half. The problem with Missouri is they couldn't put up touchdowns when they needed to. They kicked a lot of field goals. And unfortunately, if you're going to beat Georgia, you need to score touchdowns, not field goals. And because of that, Georgia's able to come back in the fourth and avoid the upset to beat Missouri 26-22. But speaking of upsets, huge game in the Big Ten West between Purdue and Minnesota. This is one of the games I should have went after, because I would have went after Purdue. It's just how Purdue, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin all play each other. And it's just so, they play themselves so close. You think you know who's going to win, but it's always the other team. So it's, and if you try to go that direction, they do the whole reverse psychology on you, and the team that's supposed to win actually wins. It's just how these four have just played. No exception. That mental collapse Purdue suffered in Syracuse was not prevalent here. They were dominant. That was a bookend type of game. They were dominant in the first and in the fourth for offense. Their defense did exactly what they had to do. Only allowed Minnesota to have 2 scores the entire game. Purdue went into Minnesota, beat them 20-10, and really put that Big Ten West in wide open contention. And then we head up to Pittsburgh, where Pitt was looking to try to rebound to get a nice win. They got Georgia Tech coming to town. Like, all right, cool, easy game. Somewhere I've got to tell that to the Yellow Jackets. They went in there and took it to Pitt. I mean, Slova still had over 300 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, but it wasn't enough. Georgia Tech did actually everything they had to do to get in there. I mean, they weren't scoring touchdowns in the game, but their defense stepped up and only allowed Pitt to have 1 touchdown in 3 quarters. It was 9-7 heading to the fourth. 9-7. I mean, who saw that one coming? And Tech would just enough to outscore a Pitt in the fourth. Hold on to win 26-21. And that was a phenomenal performance by Georgia Tech to go in there and beat Pitt in their own at home. Let's not fret anymore. Let's go ahead and bring up the Eliminator. That's right. The brand new Eliminator that I reformatted, actually broke down by conferences. And, you know, one conference is actually out of the running, and that's the MAC. When another one disappear, who else will get removed? Let's find out. Well, as you see, you have the American ACC right there. American still left with only the 4 teams with Memphis, Cincinnati, UCF, and Tulane. All of them only really having 1 loss thus far, which kind of makes things a little more interesting for the American. Do I think a 1 loss group of 5 is going to make the playoffs? No, but I got to keep them alive, because it actually, I think, will still depend on what happens with everyone else. Should make things a little interesting towards the end. Now, if you go to the ACC, you start seeing schools disappearing. Virginia back up, and they quickly removed them. Thanks for being there, Hokies. Their brothers and the Cavaliers also left, and then Louisville's collapse against BC ended up taking out the Cardinals as well. We head to the Big Ten. As you say, as I already said, the MAC's already gone, so that's why you'll see one there. And here, this Michigan State collapse is just phenomenal. I'm really surprised that they've managed to drop 3 games in a row. In Wisconsin losing at home to Illinois, I think that was it for them. Like I said, it cost their head coach their job. So the Big Ten loses 2 more, and we'll see how long Purdue can hang in there. Now we look at the Big 12 Conference USA and Independence. No one's left. Conference USA, they lost all of theirs. They all ended up losing. They all got 2 losses in a group of 5 play. Pretty much you're out. So that's Conference USA becomes the second conference out as a potential to have teams in the playoff. In the Big 12, West Virginia couldn't hang anymore. We'll see what happens next week with the Red River rivalry between Texas and Oklahoma. See who disappears then, because they both have 2 losses. Could we see one of them actually bounced out? You still see Kansas available. I think that's how the season's going to end up going. The Mountain West isn't losing anyone else. The surprising teams are still there. Air Force, San Jose State, and UNLV. That's right. San Jose State and UNLV both only have one loss, so that's, a weird aspect. Stanford finally lost their position in the Pac-12, and also in the Pac-12, Colorado fired their head coach, since the Buffaloes have no wins. Which kind of do that for you. If you can't end up winning, you'll find yourselves out of a job pretty quick. And then we have the Sun Belt and the SEC. Mizzou becomes the first SEC school to be eliminated. Otherwise, the other members of SEC is still available. And Southern Miss is no longer available for the Sun Belt. It still leaves you Coastal Carolina and South Alabama. There it is. That's the updated eliminator. And you can see that, it's starting to get a little closer. The two conferences are completely out of the picture now with the MAC and Conference USA. I think everyone kind of figured that one anyways. I think they're the two weakest conferences out there. So who's the next conference going to end up losing out? Would it be the Sun Belt? Would it be the Mountain West? Would it be the American? That's one of the other power or group of 5 conferences that could be leaving soon. But, that's that. So that's the recap. That's my eliminator. What did you think of this past weekend's football action? Which team has surprised you the most? Who is your 4 heading for the playoffs? I still got to have Georgia and Alabama up there. I'm going to have Ohio State up there. And I hope that Clemson ahead of Michigan. For right now, I think those are the top 4 as of right now. It's still early. It's only 5 weeks in the season. So my PowerPoint index won't come out until later on, but at the same time for college football playoff rankings come out when my index will come out, because it's a point system, so it takes a little while to build up and balance everything out. So right now it's weighted way too much. You got to wait. There's enough games to get that equal balance. But once again, what games last week surprised you the most? What games are you looking forward to next weekend? Let know in the comments down below. Once you're there, once again, you can hit that thumbs up. You can share this video with your friends and family. It helps support this channel. Once you subscribe, make sure you hit that bell. Let you know next time I post any more content on this channel. And I will see you next time on Chat Sports Talk.